Hello, and welcome to the channel. In this video, I'll be taking you to Delmar, New York, where on the 15th of November 2004, Peter Porco would be found murdered in his home, while his wife would be found in their bed with critical injuries. Police would quickly learn as to who attacked the pair, but something about the crime scene didn't add up. But before we get into the video, I want to thank you all for helping me achieve 2,000 subscribers. I've met and worked with some fantastic people along the way, and I'm really grateful to all who've subscribed so far. If you're here for the first time, why not help me get to 3,000 by subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let's begin. Peter and Joan Porco lived in Delmar, New York. Peter was 52 years old and an appellate division court clerk, while his wife Joan was a children's speech pathologist. The pair had been married for 30 years, and together they had two sons, Christopher, 21, and his older brother Jonathan, 23. Jonathan was serving in the US Navy, where at the time he was stationed on a US nuclear submarine. Christopher, on the other hand, was attending the University of Rochester, about a 3-hour drive from the Porco's home, where he studied biomedical engineering and economics. The Porcos were a relatively quiet family, with little to note, other than a couple of burglaries which had taken place in the years prior to 2004. Peter was a dedicated worker. At the time, the judge he worked under was in the midst of an election campaign, and it was said he was working up to 19 hours a day. On the 15th of November 2004, Peter got out of bed and carried out his regular morning routine. He went to the bathroom and brushed his teeth, got dressed, went downstairs and put the coffee maker on and loaded the dishwasher. After that, he went outside to check that the paper had arrived. Afterwards, he went back inside to continue getting ready for work. However, when he failed to show, his colleagues immediately knew something was wrong, as it was unlike Peter not to come to work without calling in to explain. Concerned for his well-being, one of Peter's colleagues, Michael Hart, stopped by the Porco's home on Brockley Drive to make sure everything was okay. It wouldn't take long for Michael to realise that something was terribly wrong, when upon arriving, he had noticed a key in the lock of the front door. Placing his head against the front door glass, he was horrified to see Peter's lifeless body sprawled across the floor. There, he laid in a large pool of blood. Michael would immediately contact the police, who would arrive soon after the call was made. Officers arrived and used the spare key still in the lock to gain entry. Inside, they began searching the premises. As they searched, they noticed blood all over the home. Peter had sustained a vicious attack to his head, and there was a blood trail leading from where he was to the kitchen, upstairs, and to his bedroom. The police followed the trail, where it led them to Peter's room. There, they found Peter's wife Joan with similar injuries to her head, and a fireman axe that the pair owned laying on the bed beside her. As they got closer to Joan, they saw the extent of her wounds. Part of her brain was exposed, and she had lost one of her eyes, and her jaw was smashed to pieces. But to the amazement of the police, Joan was still alive. Paramedics were called, but before she was taken away, Detective Christopher Bodish asked her questions about the events which took place. He wasn't sure if she would survive, and so wanted to take the opportunity while he had the chance. Joan, understandably, was unable to speak, but she was able to answer the questions with a series of nods and head shakes. Joan was able to tell Detective Bodish that it was a family member who attacked her, When he asked if it was Jonathan, Joan shook her head. When he asked if it was Christopher, in the presence of the paramedics there, Joan nodded her head. Yes. Immediately, Bodish had Christopher Porco listed as his prime suspect and got to work trying to locate him. However, Christopher would be the one who would get in touch with the police after he learned of his parents' attack, after receiving a call from a journalist at Times Union searching for a comment. Christopher explained to police that he hadn't left Rochester University and that he was asleep on the sofa in his dormitory lounge at the time his parents were found. Not only this, but Rochester University was 200 miles away from the Porco home. An investigation on the home found no signs of forced entry, and there was no sign that a burglary had taken place. The phone line to the home had been cut, and a fingerprint was recovered just inches where the line had been severed. However, apart from this, there were no other forensic signs that another person was in the home. The police saw that the home alarm system, which had been destroyed, but the box, which recorded entries into the alarm system, which was kept in the basement, was untouched. Police learned that around 2:14 AM, the alarm system was turned off from within the home, using the master code. As for the murder weapon, the fireman axe belonged to the Porcos, and it was thought to have been picked up in the garage and taken upstairs by the killer. In terms of the injuries sustained, Peter bore the brunt of the attack, sustaining 16 axe wounds to the face and head. Joan would only be hit 3 times. So if the murder took place in the early hours of the 15th of November, how was Peter Porco able to get up and get ready for work? Simply put, Peter had survived much longer than anyone would have imagined. After he was attacked, Peter would have lost consciousness. After coming round, he would have been in such a state of shock that he didn't realise that he had been victim to such a brutal attack. He then began to carry out his morning routine, blissfully unaware he had sustained a staggering 16 axe wounds to the head, before succumbing to his injuries, dying due to substantial blood loss. Joan, in the meantime, had been rushed to hospital, where she would undergo surgery for 12 hours. For Joan, medical officials were still unsure whether she would pull through, but she would defy all odds, surviving her ordeal. Jonathan would learn of his parents' fate and rush to Bethlehem Hospital to be with his mother, along with Christopher. While Christopher was firmly on the police radar, they had to figure out how he could have carried out the attack on his parents. Not only this, but there were also other potential suspects they had to consider, as well as Christopher. There was a man who had been left angry after being unsuccessful in a custody battle that Peter Porco was working on, and he vowed to take revenge on Peter. However, when police interviewed this unnamed man, he was found to have a rock-solid alibi. The next potential lead came from a man named Frank Porco, also known as Frankie the Fireman. Frank was Peter's great-uncle, and he was a loan shark who had connections to the mob. Suspecting that Frank may be about to rat on them, they could have killed Peter and injured Joan, using the fireman axe in a sick attempt to send out a message to Frank. But this was also ruled out after it emerged Frank, who was in prison at the time, was behind bars for refusing to cooperate with police, causing this theory to break down. Turning their attention back to Christopher, they began to dig into his past, and it wouldn't take long for a pattern of behaviour to emerge, which would draw further suspicion. While Peter and Joan were by no means paupers, they were reasonably comfortable financially. although Christopher would exaggerate his family's wealth, claiming to come from an extremely wealthy background. Friends of Christopher would say his family owned several real estate holdings, as well as many vacation homes. In reality, they owned none. Christopher, while happy to brag about his so-called wealth, would be considered very private to those who knew him, and would often deny requests to see the properties, offering up varying excuses as to why they couldn't go with him to see these homes. Detective Bodish also learned of tensions within the Porco family. It was established that the robberies that the family had suffered in the years prior were actually carried out by Christopher himself. Christopher would then develop an eBay scam where he would list the stolen items online, where unsuspecting buyers would part money in exchange for these goods, only to never receive these items. When these customers would email to complain their items hadn't been shipped, Christopher would then pretend to be his brother Jonathan, where he would tell them that Christopher had died and that there was nothing he could possibly do. Jonathan and Christopher shared the same eBay account, and Jonathan could see what his brother was doing. Worried about how Christopher's behaviour may impact his Navy career, he would attempt to reach out to Christopher on several occasions for an explanation, only to receive the cold shoulder each time. He would also steal property from his own roommates after it emerged a laptop that went missing appeared on Christopher's eBay account. Police would dig deeper into Christopher's history and find even more areas of concern. In the years building up to the murder, tensions had grown between Chris and his parents. They discovered that Chris had taken out a loan primarily to cover the cost of his tuition fees at Rochester University, but instead, he used this money to purchase a yellow Jeep Wrangler. Christopher was also struggling with his grades, ultimately leading to the university suspending him. He would enroll into a nearby community college, but he would only continue to struggle. While he was travelling with friends around Europe, his parents learned of his struggling grades and confronted him about them. Forging transcripts from the community college, Christopher was able to get himself back into Rochester University by late 2004. He explained to his parents that he was able to be readmitted as his professor mislaid his final exam paper, which he had taken the previous year. He went on to tell them that because of the error on the university's part, they would be covering his tuition fees. In reality, Christopher had taken out a line of credit, forging his father's signature, as well as forging his signature again on loan documents as a co-signatory. These loans would go towards paying for his Wrangler. His parents would learn of their son's activities around 2 weeks before the attack. Peter would be notified that a loan Christopher had taken out was delinquent. And not only this, he was aware that his son was now forging his signature. He had also learned that Christopher forged his signature on the line of credit that he had also taken out. And to add insult to injury, he would even learn that Christopher's tuition fees weren't being covered by the university. Peter and Joan made numerous attempts to contact Christopher by phone, to no success. He would eventually email Christopher, telling him that if he continued to forge his signature, he would have no choice but to file forgery affidavits with the bank. Despite Christopher's behaviour, Peter and Joan made it clear that their son was still welcome in the family home, and told them that while they were disappointed with his actions, they still loved him and cared for his future. It was also discovered about a week prior to Peter's murder and Joan's brutal assault that Christopher had visited a financial advisor looking for advice, telling the professional that he was coming into some money. Christopher, by the age of 21, had racked up almost $50,000 worth of debt. Police believed that instead of working his way out of this debt, he would try and get his hands on his parents' life insurance, which was worth $1 million. Police then got to work trying to deconstruct Christopher's alibi. They visited the university and got to work speaking to students and teachers there. They learned from some of the students who happened to be up late that night, that when they visited the dormitory at about 3 a.m, Peter wasn't there sleeping on the sofa. They obtained the university CCTV and looked for any signs of Christopher. At 10:30 p.m, they would strike gold. A yellow Jeep, which resembled Christopher's Wrangler, was seen leaving the campus and was spotted again 6 minutes later off campus. They then visited the toll booths, which Christopher would have needed to use if he was heading to his parents. 2 attendants told police that on the night, they recalled a yellow Jeep passing through the cash-only lanes that night. The Jeep would then be seen returning to campus at 8:30 that morning. Police knew that this would give Christopher plenty of time to commit the crime. Crucially, a neighbour recalled seeing Christopher's car outside the Porco's home at around 4 a.m, but didn't think anything of it at the time, assuming it was just Christopher staying over. Police theorised that on the night, he left campus to head to his parents' home. He arrived there, where he would use the spare key to enter the home, where he then deactivated the home alarm at 2:14 a.m. He would then collect the fireman's axe from the garage to give the impression that this was a mob-related hit. After committing the attack, he cut a hole in the window to make it look like a burglary, before smashing the alarm box and cutting the phone wire at about 4:59 a.m. He would then clean up before heading back to Rochester University. While the police were putting this together, they would receive a shocking twist when it emerged Joan had regained consciousness. Joan, who had previously pointed the finger at her son for carrying out this attack, now claimed that she had no memory of these events and that she didn't recall Bowdish's questions or saying Christopher was responsible. In fact, she firmly believed that her son was innocent. When Christopher Porco was arrested in 2005, he denied any wrongdoing. His mother fully believed him and helped finance his bail, along with several other family members. Christopher changed his story slightly, saying that rather than sleeping on the sofa all night, he moved his Jeep to park it off campus. He then walked around until 3 a.m. before returning home. The thing that you have to remember about this case was that there was absolutely no forensic evidence available. As a matter of fact, the fingerprint that police found near the severed wire didn't match Christopher's prints, further cementing Joan's belief that her son was innocent and that the police were bungling the investigation. In July 2006, Christopher Porco's trial would begin. His mother would attend alongside her son and support him throughout the trial, remaining by his side. The prosecution argued that while there was no DNA evidence found at the scene, this was because Christopher had been working as a veterinarian and as such, learned how to efficiently clean up forensic evidence. They also argued that he had the time, opportunity and motive to commit the murder of his father and attempted murder of his mother. They explained that while they couldn't identify the plates on the yellow Wrangler Jeep caught on CCTV, there was defining markings such as a mud patch, which matched the mud patch found on Chris's Jeep. Christopher's brother Jonathan would also take the stand, telling the court that their relationship was strained. Christopher's own frat brothers also testified that Christopher wasn't sleeping in the dorm at the time he claimed he was there. His defence would argue that it wasn't Christopher who had used the spare key to gain access to the home, but rather Peter, explaining that he must have used the key while he was in autopilot. Furthermore, the owners of the veterinarians testified that Christopher was a kind man who they believed was incapable of such a heinous crime. This was because Christopher lived with them for a short time. His mother also took the stand and defended her son, repeating that she couldn't recall nodding to Bowdish, and again, protesting her son's innocence. The jury was sent to determine Christopher Porco's fate, and when they returned with a guilty verdict. Christopher Porco was convicted on 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. He was sentenced to 50 years to life imprisonment, where he's currently residing at Clinton Correction Facility in Delmar, New York. The jury told Joan that the claim she nodded to Bowdish was not a factor in their decision-making, possibly offering some assurances that she hadn't condemned her own child. To this day, Christopher's mother believes her son is innocent and is still fighting to clear his name. In 2013, a movie titled Romeo Killer: The Christopher Porco Story was released. Christopher tried and failed to stop the production of the film, arguing that it was pure fiction. This case is magnified by the almost unbelievable routine Peter followed automatically before his death. However, this is a case which essentially boils down to a son who dug himself into a hole he couldn't climb his own way out of, and rather than ask for help from those who cared for him, nurtured him, and supported him, he instead decided to take an axe to them, kill one of them, and try to take their life insurance money. My heart genuinely goes out to Joan. As a parent, I wholly understand wanting to defend your flesh and blood, even when the truth is essentially staring right at you. Although perhaps a mother's intuition isn't something that should be so easily overlooked. If you found this case informative, please consider liking the video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell, so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching the video. Until next time, take care, and goodbye. For now.